was that? Beautiful, wasn't it? That's the magic of high frame rate, slow motion footage. Hi, I'm Aris Gandhi, and today we're going to talk about high frame rate or slow-mo footage, or basically footage that looks like this. Some of this footage was shot from my phone, some from my camera, but the point being, most of it I have shot in a high frame rate. Now let's go a little technical. I won't go too deep into the technical part of this because you can find many videos online about this and what is a frame rate and what is the right frame rate for what. But for now, आज के लिए हम बात कर रहे हैं shooting videos or B-rolls or fashion films or music videos or videos which look dreamlike and cinematic. So जल्दी से बताता हूँ कि high frame rate यानी कि FPS जो लिखा होता है फोन में या in your camera you have the FPS, that is frames per second. So that means if you shoot on a higher frame rate, that is not on a 25. Usually the default frame rate for a film or a cinema or something like that or a YouTube video is mostly 25 or 24 frames per second depending on which side of the world you're living in. If it's PAL then it's 25, if it's NTSC then it's 24. So we in India mostly shoot at 25 frames per second and for especially for YouTube and things like that and for the internet. Now 25 frames per second पे shoot करके तुम्हें normal motion blur आएगा, as in when you move something like you move your hand like I'm talking or anything you talk to the camera, if you're talking to the camera, if you're shooting somebody talking to the camera or there are dialogues or films like that, they're mostly shot on 25 frames a second. That's a normal realistic movement or whatever. अब उसको थोड़ा slow करना है तो you have to increase the frame rate. That's when you kind of, in layman's term, it's called a slow motion. When you kind of shoot at a high frame rate and when you edit it, you decrease the speed. So most of my videos, fashion films and stuff like that, I have shot on 100 FPS, that is 100 frames a second or 60 frames a second depending on your camera or your phone. Most of the phones shoot on 60 frames a second also. So if you want to shoot cinematic B-rolls or these slow-mo things of you cooking or somebody making something or somebody just running in slightly slow-mo or blowing some petals from the hands or splashing water maybe or just twirling, girls wearing fancy dresses and twirling, all that will look beautiful if you shoot on a high frame rate, that is a 60 frames per second frame rate and or higher. अब उसका advantage बताता हूँ. Number one, supposing you've shot the footage on 50 frames per second or 60 frames per second, you can decrease the speed or make the speed half of what it was in edit or in post. If you have a higher frame rate camera, that is 100 FPS, that you can slow it down to 1/4, like almost 25% you can slow it down, and that will be even more slower and smoother. So when you're shooting at a very high frame rate, one thing that is taken care of is a camera jerk or a camera movement. Like if you're shooting on a 25 frames per second or 24 frames per second, when you're moving, supposing you're moving with the camera and if you don't have a gimbal नहीं है या hand stabilizer नहीं है, only a camera or only a phone, still you can avoid little jerks or slight movements which happen with walking or with like a holding a camera just by your bare hands. In a slow-mo, all that gets reduced because with the slow-mo, these small little jerks are not really visible. अब अगर normal speed पे होगा, normal speed मेरा मतलब है अगर 25 frames per second पर होगा and you're just walking with your camera or your phone, so every little jerk or every little movement can be very visible in the frame or in the camera. But basically I'm telling you that if you slow it down when you shot on a high frame rate, the videos will look more cinematic and more silky smooth. Not too many jerky movements. Now the second advantage of shooting in a high frame rate is that every little detail can be captured and it won't be missed. Like supposing if, like in some fashion films that I shoot, supposing a girl or a model is just walking with a scarf in her hand and suddenly doing something and taking out a earring or doing something. Every little detail can be used in the footage, in the edit later, because every little motion will be captured. Like as I said, if she's suddenly taking out a earring maybe or putting it on a earring, in 25 frames a second, if she's just doing something like this, it'll just be like as if she's wearing a earring and then she took it out. In the slow-mo, when you slow it, then you'll see every little detail, maybe the earring little dangling a little, the little nuances or a little smirk that comes. You can capture every little detail. So that's the advantage of shooting in a high frame rate, because there are so many frames every second that you can see every detail and capture it and see where you want to pause or where you want to edit, or every little detail you can grab and capture and keep it in your final product. And point number 3 being that because of that, supposing you didn't get too much footage of something or something that you shot, still you can somehow kind of take out the best of the best parts if you have shot in a high frame rate. For example, just an example, that when I have shot Malaika Arora for some of these India's Got Talents behind the scenes videos which I have made, and you can see it on my YouTube and my Instagram. So we didn't have too much of time to shoot her. I used to usually shoot her for about 15 to 20 minutes, and in that 15 to 20 minutes I used to like take as much as high res or high frame rate footage that I could, and then take out the best of the best shots. So even if you have limited footage, you can still kind of make use of it and make a nice video out of this whole little footage that you have shot. And now the final point being, everything looks good in slow motion. I believe that. Don't you believe that? I mean, even if you're just walking, or like in movies, you know, Hollywood or Bollywood films, that you see suddenly this guy is throwing a bomb and it's blasting at the back. And if he's just walking, imagine if he's just walking, how will it look? And then imagine walking in slow motion. Well, I can't do too much of that because I don't have hair. So even if I had a blower in front of my face, लोगों को पता ही चलता है कि मेरे बाल उड़ रहे हैं या नहीं उड़ रहे हैं, and if it's even in slow-mo. The point being that everything usually looks very good in slow-mo, but you have to know when to use it. You can't just be using slow-mo for everything. But since this video was specifically for using high frame rates in cameras or in your phones for making good B-roll cinematic videos or fashion films or moody cinematic films, whatever. So this is specifically for that. So one more thing. Now a lot of people may think or ask that, but we can slow down the footage even if we have shot on 25 frames a second or 24 frames a second. We can put a slow-mo effect on it or make it slow in the edit. No, that is not slow motion, because what you will be doing is using those 25 frames per second and duplicating those frames, and it will be a jerky slow-mo. That is not real slow motion. So of course there are softwares and apps which can duplicate those frames and make them look very smooth, but that is not the real slow-mo cinematic feel that you will get if you shoot at a high frame rate. So you need to shoot, even if you have your phone, you don't need to be shooting at 100 frames per second. Just shoot at 50 frames per second or 60 frames per second mostly. If you think it's a holiday or some stylized video of you making coffee, like a lot of filmmakers or YouTubers make on YouTube, or just something very nice, or some celebration that is happening in slow motion, you know, some fireworks or something like that, just capture it in 50 to 60 frames a second so that you have the capacity or you have the footage to make it slow later on in edit. So I think you got my point. If you didn't get my point, then you can ask me more questions. What am I here for, right? So if you think you benefited watching this video, give me a like. If you think you will continue watching me in future, subscribe and ring the bell icon so that you get notifications whenever a new video comes up. I'll not bug you too much, but I'll try to make these videos as entertaining as possible. So until next time, keep shooting.